have a blank seat now. Missing Steve.
Oh, is Peter not going to go?
I don't know. He's
6, don't you need one more?
submitted the letter.
Becky's here.
We need 5
Becky's
more.
here. Becky is here, but
Becky is here.
right. Becky is here.
So we have
Oh, Becky's here.
She's here.
Oh,
we
what
have
about
quorum.
Michelle?
Michelle is not able to make it tonight.
Now
Let me check Steve because I have seen Steve.
You actually.
Steve's kind of like the snow geese at that creek. Like
Yes.
you see him all the time,
And then he's
disappear.
gone.
Yeah, then he's gone.
I've seen it a bunch.
Uh,
I've seen it. I told you I've seen it a bunch.
we'll start with
He'll
that.
probably be here in
My
just
son
a
said
minute.
it's like in the
Okay.
There's someone in the hall.
All right.
You in the hall. Same with Ben. I don't know. I was like, you're supposed to play child. I've never seen my life.
Okay, call the meeting to order at 6:40. First order of business is public comment. Nathan?
Hi guys, thanks for serving. Quick concern is that my daughter's playing field hockey and I came to the initial information session which was held here in the library, and there was a couple from Roxbury who were concerned about their daughter being able to participate because practice is at 4:30 to 6. And the activities van leaves at 5:10 from the middle school. So I want to make sure that's on people's radar, and as you know, I suspect it's one of those unanticipated inclusion issues, but it'd be a shame if the 1 or 2 kids who want to participate in sports, it'd be,
See, that microphone doesn't do anything for us.
Right,
It does it for there.
Yeah, it doesn't for the.
so the concern is, so field hockey practice is 4:30 to 6 every day
Yeah,
after
I
school
get it.
for middle school. The activities bus going back to Roxbury leaves the middle school at 5:10. So if a student wants to participate in field hockey at the rec fields and make it back in time for the 5:10 bus, they're going to get 20 minutes of practice. That may be only one student, but anyway, it's just one of those sort of curveballs that may or may not have been anticipated in the thinking about how this all comes together, but I'm hoping that folks can respond to that and make sure that we're including all Roxbury kids in all activities and getting them home.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Nathan. And I know that's Pam is working to make sure that. I said Pam is definitely working to make sure we accommodate Roxbury as much as we can. Steve.
Hi.
So as many of you know, unfortunately, Peter Sterling has stepped down from the board, and we want to thank Peter for his, I think, 3+ years of great service on the board. It was, I think, a time of a lot of accomplishments, and he played a large role both up here and working in committees and behind the scenes to, I think, make a lot of great things happen. So we thank Peter, but it also means that we have to replace Peter. There will be some, I think there's a notice on the website already, and I'll send some reminders by social media. But the protocol for replacing a vacancy on the board is that the board replaces that vacant position until the next election.
was a leftover and we
No.
thought.
No, it's a new thing. And
Okay.
It's particular to us. It doesn't mean that there were some people in the past who served illegitimately on the board.
No, never.
Did you say confer or
Confer. The word in the statute is confer. It's unclear what exactly that means. We feel if we get a vote on it, that's about as much conferring as the city council can do.
got it?
Okay, so then just to clarify for the audience, so we'll be advertising on the website and this meeting. Will it be in any of the papers? Will the vacancy be posted anywhere else?
We're not planning to put it in the papers. We will push it out on social media.
The bridge did ask me about it.
Yeah.
I gave him
Yeah.
The
And
contact
It's also
information.
on
Front
our
porch
social media
forum,
pages.
maybe?
Okay.
We can put it on Front Porch Forum too. And I believe Steve Mills has already explained the process in an article. He at least asked me about it.
Is there, so there, but I want to be clear, because I'm imagining it in the reverse situation where, let's say a Roxbury member needed to be replaced, and there's a predominance of Montpelier votes
Yeah.
on this board. So I understand the need for the select board of Roxbury to confer. But in a case as if it were that, or in this case, what, is it fair game for, it's a strict vote, so that means the Roxbury representatives in this case will have their votes on who replaces this person, even though it's a Montpelier person, and in the other situation, the Montpelier members of the board would have the majority vote in selecting the Roxbury person
Yes.
to fill, and that makes sense why the select board would have to
Yeah.
be happy with that. So I think I'm understanding this, but it's new.
Yeah, it's new.
Yes.
And I
Okay.
think that's probably what the legislature had in mind when it put that in, whereas, you know, if there was a town like Roxbury that's outvoted on the board and they wanted, you know, say the Montpelier people wanted someone who was maybe from Roxbury but didn't necessarily represent Roxbury the way Roxbury would want to be represented, then Roxbury could put a great hat on.
But for this case, Roxbury members of this board should feel confident in participating
Yes,
in this
it's
process.
all 9
Excellent.
members will vote on, well,
Great.
except me unless there's a tie, will vote on an appointee.
And Peter, who doesn't belong.
8 members.
Yeah. And Peter, who's no longer on the board, Peter is officially doing something else with his Wednesday. And then I think, is there any further questions on that?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Heather's not in the audience. Is anybody taking notes this evening?
I told her because we were going into executive session so far, she's gonna watch this part of the meeting on tape, which she does anyway,
Okay.
to take the notes. I was
That's
just being
good.
kind to an employee
That's
who
great.
worked all day long.
Okay.
Thanks.
But she'll be here after the executive
Okay,
session.
it was just,
Any other comments on replacing Peter's seat? And then next item before we go into executive session, I know Heather is patiently waiting, the consent agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda,
Do you have a second?
including the additional approval. To see.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Now we need a motion to go into executive session. So I think first we need a motion that we.
The purpose is for advice from our legal counsel.
Exactly.
So I don't think we need 2 motions for that.
You can just go straight into
We
executive?
just have to move to go in for that purpose.
Okay.
It's not the one that needs a finding.
Do you have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll move to go into executive session.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Back.
On the Judiciary
and
Committee, too,
We're
so
here
we
the
get to
SBAC
go
results
voluntarily, or
presentation
did you-
from
Dr. Mike
Mike
Muir.
Muir.
So I ran for Lieutenant Governor. I got my passes. And I was on Oxford. So I did 3. I ran once,
Actually,
lost,
could I
and
have
then
another one?
zero.
Because
So
she's
I
over
lost
that.
So Judiciary Committee during some hearings during the Harrisburg. I remember being on the subject to Brian committed suicide. His dad.
Did you have that properly mic'd?
Of course, yes. Thanks for having me. What I have prepared here is just an overview of our SBAC results, an explanation of how we're going to use those results to our benefit, and I'll be able to answer any questions you might have, hopefully. So on the first slide, this is generally how we did in 2017-18. I have the scale over here on the side. This is the percentage of students that got a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. Blue is your ELA, and red is your math. So we had about 64% of our students proficient or higher in ELA, and 47% in math. And I'm going to dig deeper into those, but those are the results that go on the paper. That's kind of what everyone sees. And when we talk about SBAC, one of the things that you don't hear a lot about are claims and targets. And claims are generally these broad statements of categories like writing or reading that they talk about in SBAC. And when you dig down a layer deeper, there are these things called targets, which are essentially the skills or evidence that we want students to show that they're reaching these Common Core standards. So when we look at our results, we're able to dig down and see those results, actually quite a great interface with the SBAC assessment to show us what's going on. And for example, in 2017-2018 in ELA, the claim of writing was our lowest area, a place where we need to look at. This is the state comparison. So this is us in the blue. This is the state average. These are preliminary results, so you may see some shifting eventually, but that's what's on there now. You can see we were above the state average in all grades. So in ELA, when we looked at claims instead of writing, we dug deeper into the targets, and these are the things that we were doing really well. For example, there were more than I could fit on a slide, but this is an example of the information we get. So we know that we're doing pretty well with target 10, word meaning. And it's kind of interesting because a lot of people assume that we're not doing a lot of vocabulary work, and we're doing okay in that. Grade 3 target 11, reasoning and evidence, we're also very strong in that. But it also shows us what we need to focus on. So at target 7, language use, interpret and use language by distinguishing literal and non-literal forms. That's an area where we can focus in a little bit more. And the same with writing, grade appropriate grammar usage, things like that. And that's shown to us at each grade level, so we can really dig deep and see what's going on. These are some more of those target areas by grade level, just some examples. This isn't all of them, but in grade 3, here's some areas that we might want to look at. Grade 4, grade 5, all the way down to 9. This really helps us hone in our professional learning that we're talking about and good discussions, and also helps us look at our local assessment data and understand what we can align and look at. Here's our math scores, same setup as before. So the blue is the us and the red is the state. We were below the state average in 2 grade levels, grade 3 and grade 9. A couple things to note, and I talked about this on the next slide as well. This is the first year that we've given it to grade 9. It was grade 11 in previous years. And also we have an influx of students to the high school in grade 9 that haven't been in our system. And the area where we were need to focus most, according to this information, is concepts and procedures. I'll dig a little deeper into that in the next slide.
Just a quick clarifying question. Is that the current grade 3 and grade 9, or is that grade 3 and grade 9
Last year.
So it's current grade 4 and grade
Yes.
10? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the timing of the results is always kind of
Yeah.
funky.
That's what I thought, but I
And
just
it
wanted
moves
to
from
make
year to
sure.
year, so that's a little interesting. So the math targets, when we dug a layer deeper below those claims, one of our strengths was solving real-world mathematical problems. This is from grade 6. This is my example in grade 6. And in grade 6, one of the areas that we could focus in on was applying and extending previous understandings of number systems. And we have those examples for every grade level. I didn't put them all here, but we are able to get information about what we're seeing that helps really guide our discussions. And clearly, when we have any grade levels, but in math, these were our lowest areas were math. So we want to look at that a little deeper. This is our performance over time.
Can I,
Yeah, absolutely.
you're changing the scale on these. We're starting in the 40s on the ELAs and starting at 0 on the math. I'm getting confused by how we're doing
I'm sorry.
relatively.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just sets it to fit, basically, essentially what it does. So it levels to wherever it is. These percentages are the percentages proficient or higher.
Right, but if we look at like a 46 versus a 52 in math, and then we look at, I don't know what it is in ELA, but, see how you're starting at zeros?
Yeah.
So it looks like we're pretty close.
Yeah.
And when you go to the other scale, it looks like we're gapingly ahead
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah.
And
No, you're right.
I'm just like, wait a minute, we can't be that different than the average, but we're really not if you use a different scale. I'm just being,
It's a good point, Steve.
No,
I'm like,
it's a very good
it
point.
just looked weird, and now I'm like, okay, now we're not, it's not that different. Okay, okay.
Well, the other thing about this scale is the assumption when you look at it, first off, is that 100% is at the top, and that is not true.
Correct.
You're
Oh,
only
right,
at
another
60%.
point, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So again, we were below in grade 3 and grade 9. These are the targets that we're going to look at. Some of the targets that are more.
Yeah.
Mike, can I have a backup question?
Sure.
Perhaps I just don't understand. Why, if you're testing in 11th grade, you're compared to other 11th graders, and we're now testing at 9th, and we're comparing to other 9th graders, why the difference? Why the drop?
Why did they change it?
Yeah. Well, not the function, why did they move it from 11 to 9? I understand it, you had it
Sure.
at 9, you know more what it is you need to address. I concur with that. But then if we do so well compared to other 11th graders, why aren't we doing so well as compared to other 9th graders?
Yeah, so there's a bit of, I get to that later on when I talk
Okay.
about what we're going to do with this information
Okay.
a little bit, but remind me if I don't answer that
Okay,
question.
all right.
So this is our performance over time. Again, remembering that this was the first year we assessed 9th graders, but our general trend in achievement has been since 2015.
We're going down.
And then we started to look at the subgroups. So we started to look really at those economically disadvantaged. That's the term that the state uses.
Mhm.
Economically disadvantaged students. They represent 21% of our total assessed population. 12% of our economically disadvantaged students are on an IEP, and 94% of those students did not achieve proficient. So it's definitely an area where we want to look. The red represents below the standard, so 52% of our economically disadvantaged students were below the standard in ELA, and that's a little blurry for me there, but
66.
66% below the standard in that.
Wait a minute, it says 94%. Oh, IEP.
Yeah.
Never mind, thank you.
So this is the what next part. So one of the things that we didn't have time to do yet was really dig into those cohorts to answer that question. Why are we doing so well at 11th grade and 9th grade looks different? Part of it is, I think it shows the growth in high school.
Mhm.
The other part is Mike McGrath and I found out, we had 34 students move into our school in 9th grade last year that weren't in our school system. They were in private schools or homeschooling or some other alternative situation. That's not pointing a finger, but it's a contributing factor in the data. So from 8th grade to 9th grade, we had a bump of 34 students that we hadn't assessed the year prior.
Well, the other thing is they did not have advantage of the curriculum presented in our school system,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
assuming that was good.
We have to look at a scale score analysis. So one of the things that you're going to hear from us in ESSA, when we get our report card eventually from ESSA, is that they'll be looking at scale scores. And essentially scale scores will show year to year. A student could get a 2 in 3rd grade and a 2 in 4th grade. And that doesn't show the growth. But when we look at the scale score, we can see how far students actually grow from year to year.
Individual students.
Yeah, and cohorts and teams.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, and that's something that's often missed when we just report out on 3s and 4s. So that's another layer that we're gonna go into. IAB administration analysis. So there are these essentially questions and tasks that you can unpack for students that are really good. It's not teaching to the test, it's not preparing for the test, any of that stuff. They're just really thoughtful problem solving things to work through with kids. And we can gain a lot of information about kids, how kids learn, how our instruction's going through using those. So we're gonna look at those this year. And then more claims and target analysis, really digging in at a deeper level, looking at cohorts, looking at kids. We're a small enough school system that we can really identify these students and figure out what we need to do. So that's the next layer. The second week in September, we didn't get to it. But we're really working on it. And then there's some additional slides and charts. I didn't want to leave Roxbury out. Even though our results from the previous year don't include them. These are their results for grade 3 and grade 4. We're still going through some stuff with the state, trying to get access to the results and be able to access their information, so this is the best I could do for the moment. But you can see definitely some of the same math concerns, so that aligns with the work that we're doing nicely in terms of elementary schools. And then these lovely charts are a breakdown of each grade and each achievement level, so that you can look at them and kind of pick it apart. You can get really lost in the data, it's really fun. Like Libby and I can geek out for a couple hours if we don't look up. So
These bars should be represented like as stacks or pies probably to give us a better sense, because they all add up to 100, right? Each bar, each set of bars adds to 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that charts like this tell me or jump out at me right away is that we have a roller coaster going on. It's not the same. So typically, when I see roller coasters like that, I start to ask questions like, our scores on this particular assessment are based on the cohort of kid, not on the teaching, right? So essentially, if our teaching was right where the same in every grade level, matched to the targets that we want them to get to, you would see consistency, you would see this. But when it's like this, it's based on the cohort of kid. So what I question impact then, so we wanna look at that trend data over the last couple of years and see if that's the same. Is the grade 7 cohort that was so strong, were they strong in 6th grade and 5th grade as well? Is that a strong cohort of kid? And why isn't the grade 6 cohort that had such good scores, like what's going on there? That when I see roller coaster scores, those are the types of questions I ask. And we're at the question asking stage right now.
Absolutely.
We don't know the answers to anything.
Thank you for asking the question.
Yeah.
And those last two are consistent. The top line is 50%.
Yes.
Go for it.
So I noticed on the slide that showed the trend line going down. It also shows the trend line going down for the state as a whole. And I'm sorry
So
to find it. And I just wondered if
these are all
No, that's
Go down
ELA
to
and
ELA
math.
and math.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is
so
ELA.
that is just ELA
math.
and math.
Yeah.
ELA math, ELA.
So we're not, so the trend line for the state is not down.
I'd have to look.
Okay,
I think for the most part it's static,
It's
but
static.
I'm not sure.
okay, all right, thanks.
It's a jump.
I don't want to, do you have more to go? I don't want to.
No, that's
Okay,
okay.
well, so the other piece of this, as a parent, I am faced with this, testing question every year, the option, do you exercise your opt-out kind of thing? And as a
Sure.
school board member, I'm like, no, we're not going to opt out, we're going to contribute data, right? And it's good for our students to learn how to take tests and all that other stuff. But there's also a group of folks who feel like, let's just do as little testing as possible for our kids. So the reason I said this is I want to know how we're doing on our participation percentages.
Yeah.
And are we seeing differences by cohorts there? And is that influencing our scores by cohort in terms of who's opting out?
So I have several answers-ish to that question. Number one, so what I'm looking at with this data right now is just raw spreadsheets.
Absolutely.
So, and then on there it doesn't say who opted out or who didn't. So I'm not particularly sure of that. There were several exempt or expired notifications, which means one of several things. It means the student either started a session and didn't finish, or didn't take the session. And I'm not sure. There were several of those, and we get a 0 for each one of those. But
We get a,
We get
a
a 0.
0.
So they grade it as a 0 as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
just leaving it out.
So we get a
if
0.
they begin but don't finish?
If they begin but don't finish.
You have the
session.
option of coming back to finish. So
But
it's
I
not-
understand, that's important in the SBAC, but if they choose not to participate, it's not a 0.
It is.
No, it
Yes,
is
it's a 0.
Yeah.
Any child in our district who, in these cohorts that chooses not to opt, we get a 0 averaged in.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So it's
Well,
So
that's
there's a
interesting.
problem.
There are other
it's,
major
it's a
consequences
tragedy
as
that
well.
commons thing.
There are.
Yeah, I mean, if there was,
I don't know.
schools went into like panic mode when people started talking of opt-out
Yeah.
because they can pull our funding, they can pull funding from us because of that,
Who's they?
the AOE.
AOE.
So there's other consequences to that action. But at the same time, this is an assessment. It's not the only assessment we look at. It's a big assessment to show not necessarily individual scores and what we can do with individual kids, but does our program match the rigor of the standards that are out there? That's the major overall question that we're asking. And are we continually to increase our ability to meet that rigor? So a chart like this, you know, as a first timer to this district with Mike and I, that's a worrisome chart. You know, we need to flip that around. And so it's an assessment that for programmatic measures is important to us as a district. And as a board member, I think that would be a message that I'd want you to tell the public.
The other thing about this is if you do no assessments, everybody might seem happier, but you have no idea then how everybody's doing. So for the parents to say, I don't want so many assessments, I don't want a lot of them, but you have to have enough to determine whether your child is getting the information you're presenting.
Well, and I think there's a perception out there that not only is testing not the complete assessment or perhaps the best assessment, but I think there's also a fear that the teachers start teaching differently because of the assessment. And I think communicating that that's not the
But
case.
we want them to, right?
Well, I mean, we want them to teach rigorously, but we don't want them to teach a test. We want them to teach.
It sounds like we do.
Actually,
I think we want to do well on the test, but we don't want them to teach to the test.
Here's what I would
I'd like
have
to work with educators on
I
this
think
point.
we do.
This is not a horrible test.
No, it's a good one,
No,
we
it's
know.
a good
It's-
test.
The SBAC is a pretty decent assessment,
Yeah.
and believe me, I would be the first to tell you if I thought it was garbage.
And we could say we want our children to know the questions, the answers to the questions that are on the test, right?
Yeah, I would say the targets. Yeah,
Right.
it's skills that we want them to speak.
Do you, so to
Please
ask this question, I mean,
Sure.
in a more focused way, do you, I'm taking it from what you're saying, that there's information in the data that would lead to interventions in the teaching process?
For the individual.
Well, yeah,
Or is the
into
education?
knowledge. I mean,
It's-
looking at this just off, like our math scores were considerably lower. So what's happening in our math instruction? What kind of learning do we need to
Right.
provide for our teachers in order to increase their capacity, to increase a kid's capacity to understand conceptual and math, you know?
But are you asking about individual interventions with
No,
with
just
students?
district.
Okay.
It's
I-
district, this is
Individual.
district. We
District
wouldn't
intervention.
plan
We don't use the
individuals.
data to help the individual students, so the individual has no incentive.
Not, well, think about it, when we get this assessment scores to the level that we need to intervene
too
with,
Yeah.
it's not soon enough. It's more programmatic measures that we're looking at.
Right.
So it's useful, you're
It's
saying.
incredibly
Oh, yeah,
useful.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
incredibly
think that's
useful.
part of the
That's
issue
part of
here
the
is to
message.
see it
It's
as, right,
useful.
this is part of being a good citizen in a community, really a lot of this is. And, I mean, there is a benefit to the individual in that students do need to practice taking tests. It's a sad fact of life, but it's true. And so, but it is a community contribution to data is really what we're doing. It's not helping your individual student at that moment or in that school year get a better education. It's helping future students get a better education, and hopefully it's having us understand what's going on with a continuation of curriculum and a continuation of effort over years. But I'm not naysaying tests. We take tests. It's not that. I'm just answering questions that I hear regularly in the community about, look, our kids don't need to take tests. It's over tested, you know. And SBAC is the least of our concerns in many ways. But we have the kneecap still on the science. Are we still doing?
Kneecap has changed.
It's changing too, or it changed? That's great. Was that this year?
Last year was the first pilot year
Of what?
of the.
It's science assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're calling it. They're
Okay.
calling it the science
That's fine,
assessment.
that's fine.
They're
And
not
we assume
calling
it's
it-
moving more towards the SBAC kind of concepts, or
It's more interactive.
interactive at
Yeah,
least? Okay.
grid-driven, yeah.
Yeah,
I've
okay. I
only
mean,
seen it one time, and
right.
It's on the computer. It's
Yeah.
SBAC-like.
Yeah,
And
got
that
it.
one is like that the state created?
We're part of a consortium.
Yeah, essentially, it looks similar to what I believe Connecticut and Rhode Island have used and a couple other states. I don't think that they created anything new per se, but it's new to us from DCAT.
The other thing I'd say about this is it does tell us cohorts, whether it's a grade cohort or a socioeconomic cohort, that where we have a problem. And then individually we can figure out, when you say it's not helping the individual
Right, for the
student,
following
I'm
year or-
hoping that
yeah.
then there's a curriculum change which actually does help that student in that cohort.
The trend data is very important to us. It tells us a lot of information on multiple facets.
About the program and educational.
About program, about teacher quality, about cohorts, I mean, there's so many different ways we can look at that data.
We are really, I can't speak for everyone, but some of us on the board are very excited about the quality of data we're hearing here, and we're very thankful. And also the longitudinal data, the cohort data, that sort of thing has been something we've been wanting for a long time, and we're really happy to hear that it's a priority for you. And as we break that down by subpopulations, I think that's really important too, to the extent it can be done and not be identifiable. We are very excited about that. So thank you for this, and we do value data, is I guess how I want to leave that. It's super important.
Thank you for doing it and keep looking at it.
Sure.
We will.
When Mike says we geek out on it, we geek out on it.
Good. And the longitudinal.
Like, can we do it today?
No data today. Well, the longitudinal piece is the part that I think we're dying to kind of hear if that's productive or if it's fruitful for you as you get into the data. I know we have small samples here, but as you can find truth in it.
So, I just wanted, Nathan wants to say something. I'm resisting because I want to try to keep public comment to public comment. If it's,
Ooh.
huh? Nice. Well, I want to be mindful that there are people who are not able to make it or participate who do have the. But if it's an urgent question, go ahead. But otherwise,
You're
I
cracking,
think
Jim.
Jim.
You're
Well,
cracking.
but kind of from now on, that's going to be kind of protocol.
Speak to Libby and Mike after.
All right, perfect. Great. Policy readings. I think we're moving around at a pretty good clip here. So we have 5 policies. I think did all of them come out of the retreat? I think all of them did.
Yeah.
Well, not the retreat, the all-day planning session.
Yes, all-day mission.
Mission, vision, budgeting, board superintendent relationship, board expectations, and superintendent expectations. So let's start from the top and.
Good, for the people that weren't at our all-day work session, the board came up with this, worked very hard to come up with this vision, and then began the idea of a mission. And I think where we are now is to decide, our superintendent had the suggestion that perhaps we have a district vision and that each school have their own mission. And so we did not have time to consider that. So before we spend any more time on the board mission, I think we need to talk about that.
I mean, I have
So you
one.
want to split it and have a separate discussion of the vision from the mission or the mission from the vision?
No, actually, I think we've decided on the vision.
That's what I'm trying to confirm
And so
here.
that's
So
that's
done.
there. We've
Okay.
done it.
Then you have
But now the question is, what do we do about this mission? What's the board's pleasure on mission?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is it mutually exclusive? Do we have a district vision and a district mission, and then have each school also have their own particular mission?
So one thing I noticed.
You're looking at me, I'm not to decide this. This is
No,
a
no.
board decision to talk
Yeah,
about.
appreciate it.
I would just say, this is less about whether it's school by school. I actually like the idea of each school having one very
Yeah.
much, but
That's gonna
I
happen
have-
regardless.
that's gonna happen regardless. I don't get having a vision and a mission that are basically the same kind of thing. Like, we basically were trying to write two different sentences that captured the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish in the district under two different labels. And so I think if we're gonna have a mission, what they're called, I don't really know what the right word is for, but if it's, I need a better understanding of what this is supposed to convey that's different than the vision. And if it's just gonna be another sentence that says something very similar, I'm not sure why we have had it twice.
The vision
Is
is supposed
it more about values? Is it more concrete? Is it more
directive,
specific? Is it
maybe?
I don't know, but I need a better understanding
The
of what it's
vision is
supposed
supposed to be the big picture, and the mission is supposed to be how you're getting there.
Well, as an outsider who was not part of that, just very briefly, I will say the mission adds only one thing, which is that it focuses on the individual of the child with talents, passions. And I think that it's basically talking about, I mean, this is just a brief reading. It says, it's basically saying that this is our method for getting to the vision, effectively. These are the values we instill in getting to this vision, but it could easily be wrapped into a vision and be done with it. And the second half of this, to provide an education that empowers our graduates to build a better future, if we're not talking about empowering the individual for some reason, it fits right into engaged citizens and lifelong learners. So I don't know that that's even necessary. So that's just like, it looks a little bit redundant, and it looks like it should all be combined into one. I was not part of the history of that.
I
Right.
looked it up, and it can, in one sentence, it says, a vision statement outlines what a company wants to be in the future. A mission statement describes what a company wants to do now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Then it should all be mission.
Which is just,
Yeah.
so,
Would it be? Yeah, and I personally
Right.
lean towards one. Though I do think we're going to have to be explicit about what we're calling it, because the other policies that we have in front of us tonight refer back to
I
whatever it
circled
is
it
that's
all in
here.
all the policies, so
So,
we have
right,
to
so
make
if
a
we're gonna
decision.
we have to call it something.
Yes,
Right, if
we
we're
have
gonna
to do
have school
something.
mentions and district missions, and like we need to make sure that we're explicit with what we're calling this, so our policies can refer back to this. But I think I would personally lean more towards a single, we'll just say vision for something for the discussion right now.
Other comments? So do we want to take an action to amend? Do you want to just take a big?
I want to ask a
X
question
through-
then.
Yeah.
If you, maybe even more helpful to the people who weren't there, is if you cover up the mission and just look at the vision, is that good enough? Or is it missing
Do
something?
you care about personalized learning in your vision? That's what it does. It's
I
saying.
think it's real close. You know, maybe our schools cultivate a caring, creative, and equitable community that ensures, something that has it more forward-facing. And I apologize, I
like
was
a
not there, so now I'm
declarative
weighing in
statement.
too late.
I'm gonna try to proceed on with this, so.
It's
So
hard.
to say, I know it's hard, and it was hard for us then, but the question is, I'm not sure we put in time today to have this
Yeah.
long discussion about this, but we would know what we want to do next if we could make a decision on that. In other words, if you think we'd just like one statement, but knowing you're just gonna have one, this vision isn't quite it, then we could decide on a process later that would get us there. Now,
So my thought, reading the vision, I don't like the all our schools are. I think we should have it be aspirational, because I'm not sure our schools right now, I think we strive to be an equitable community. I'm not sure we're there.
Yeah.
I think it should be more aspirational than declarative.
True.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going back to the question.
I think
I'm gonna call the question of whether you want two statements or one, and then we could work on what the one is at a different time with a different protocol.
It sounds like most people want one.
I think
We
most
want
people
one
want.
vision, and then the schools can do their own.
Should we take a,
Yeah,
either
let's
make a
take it
motion on that or a straw poll?
a straw poll is enough because we're not adopting anything.
It's a
Yeah.
first
Right.
reading, so.
Yeah. So who wants to edit out the mission and just go with the vision?
I want one vision.
think I'm on one.
Mhm.
Steve, you're abstaining?
Oh,
or-
no, I'm totally onto one, and I've just
Okay.
got to reread it.
Okay, so we'll, on another agenda of another time, rework it
Rework it.
together. But my question is, are you calling it a vision? It's very important for the next 4 documents you're doing. Are you calling it a vision, or are you calling it a mission?
Becky, you were thinking a vision and have it be aspirational,
Yes.
rather than whatever a mission
A
is?
vision is what you want to be in the future.
I think it
A
makes
vision for
sense
the
at the
future.
board level to have an aspirational
Oh, vision,
statement.
I do
yeah,
too.
that's my thought too.
So we're calling it a vision, and we'll get back to it, and now you can go on to the other things.
Okay,
Okay, good.
thank you.
So we will schedule a vision discussion at some aspirational point in the future. Budgeting. Budget policy, comments, discussion on our,
This looks real familiar.
Well,
Budget.
in bullet number 1, could you change mission to vision?
yes. We will do that throughout.
Who's in charge of the edits? Are you, Jim?
Huh?
Are you in charge of the edits?
I can be in charge of the edits.
Okay.
So this has the procedure and is the procedure and format part of the policy? Or will that be separate and procedure only?
I think it's policy as procedure. I think because it's so pertinent to us.
Okay.
I think the idea was to have it actually be part of the policy.
You could actually call it a calendar, budget calendar, couldn't you? Instead of
Yeah,
How about
procedure.
procedure?
Or budget process,
Process.
Yes.
Yeah, or process.
which is kind of synonymous with procedure, but
That's good.
Before we get all the way down into that section, the last statement in the opening section, the board will create and charge a finance committee to ensure oversight and accountability for the district's finances. I'm interested in potentially clarifying that it would be a standing committee versus an ad hoc.
So we should maybe say charge a standing.
I think to
Finance
have,
committee.
standing finance committee, yeah.
That makes sense to me, that we'd be clear.
It
with
should be.
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
Could we call that middle section the annual budget calendar and process?
Sure.
Signal exactly what it is.
Yes.
Makes sense.
What were you calling it?
Annual budget,
Annual budget calendar and process.
Which,
Where
leave
it
this
says
ru-
budget
how about, instead of
procedure.
calendar, why don't we call it schedule, or scheduling process?
Okay.
Because calendar suggests that we've actually set dates, at least it does in my mind.
Are we setting dates?
Huh?
so will this be,
You did.
We're setting rough dates, but.
so if we look in
It's a
December,
calendar. Okay,
so Jim, if you look in December, January, public hearing as set in budget calendar,
Oh, right, because there's.
is that
really-
gonna, is that different than what we're doing right now?
Because in September, we'll have to adopt the actual.
Calendar of
Calendar.
what's being done.
So maybe this
How
is
about-
called a schedule,
Yeah.
and the thing
Yeah.
coming up with very specifics
is
is
the
called a
calendar.
calendar.
Yeah, so how about annual budget, just
Schedule.
schedule?
So, just because we don't have enough on our agenda, Brian and I were talking about on the way in that this standing finance committee for our new board needs a charge. I don't know that we have one.
I don't think you'd have one either. I think when you get Peter's replacement, Brian and I are kind of informally trying to get a grasp of what all our committees are.
Okay,
And I know we also need to give you some help on negotiations, so, I think either the 19th or the 3rd, we can probably do a committee reshuffle and give them all the needed charges.
okay, thank you.
Other questions on the budget policy?
Just an editing thing, the
Yeah, yeah.
budget presentation format is on there twice, once not in bold.
Oh, yeah. All right.
And the capitalization is really uneven throughout the process.
I know we've talked about this in some of our last meetings. In May, the multi-year plan will be presented by the superintendent. I know we have a CIP, there's a multiple year plan here. Just wasn't sure if we're referring to the most appropriate plan or document. Since we're saying it will be presented, I wanted to make sure that we actually were presenting what does make sense for this.
For a budget.
Right.
Did you discuss this? Maybe I am misremembering, but I thought we discussed making this somewhat vague because it may,
I think that was what I was going to.
it may vary kind of depending on,
The
yeah, so
charge.
we don't have, so a future board can say, well, there needs to be a separate plan, the superintendent can say, well, that's the CIP
Falls
plus
under-
our, yeah, plus our, you know,
Building.
a capital plan, building maintenance plan,
Right. We're
It
not
gives the
making it,
superintendent
yeah.
discretion to.
so that we're not
decide what to
defining
draw
another
on.
one. Yeah, okay.
Right, and the
As long as there are
multi-year
plans,
plan
yeah.
might, yeah, you know how I love plans. The multi-year plan might be simpler than the CIP plan, which is very hard for the average
else,
community member to catch up with, so it might be clear as pertains to the budget.
yes.
I had a question, and I was responsible for trying to draft this during the meeting, so if it's wrong, it's my fault, but, number 2 on the second page, when I was looking at it again to prepare for today, I thought, the one that says emphasizes cost efficiency measures, I almost thought we had said to take that out.
We did.
At the retreat. You weren't
Oh,
at the
no,
retreat.
before the retreat.
Yeah.
We talked about it long before the retreat.
You're sure of that?
Yeah, no,
We've been talking about it for 6 months.
We did talk about taking that out.
I think we talked about taking it out, so sorry that
Catch.
it stayed in somehow.
Also, just as a formatting thing, we have kind of 2 sections of this. Well, actually, we have 3 sections. We have the introductory section where we've got bullets. We have the schedule section where we just have months listed, and then we've got the budget presentation format where we've got numbers.
Numbers, right.
It's
Huh?
wonky, it's wonky, it's wonky.
Mhm.
Is that okay with folks? Do you want consistency, or are we?
So we could turn the last one into bullets pretty easily, and then it would look similar. That's at least
Yeah.
one thing. I don't know, the dates don't seem to lend themselves to bullets, but we could at least
Yeah.
bold the date or something, do something to make it look.
Yeah,
We could professionalize it.
when you're working on those capitals.
Yeah.
Other issues, comments, questions, et cetera. Ooh, semicolon missing on 4 in the presentation format.
Yeah, the very opening sentence, the district's annual budget will, we need to insert B, developed by the administration.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to board superintendent relationship. Questions, comments, edits?
Under subjects of board's evaluation of superintendent, 6th line down, change mission to vision.
We'll have to do a search and replace on that.
Yeah.
Anything that caught my attention, section 1.2, last statement, the board must not direct the actions of district staff and must not formally evaluate any staff member.
Other than
To-
the superintendent.
Right. Do we need to declare formally? Because we wouldn't informally evaluate anybody. I mean, we're not going to evaluate anybody, period.
Good.
Correct? I mean, we're not going to, I mean, we could sit here and not write up a report, but we could say that we heard the 7th grade science teacher was doing a bad job and we're not happy about that. It wouldn't be a formal evaluation, but it could be.
And the board should never do
The
that.
board shouldn't
Right.
be doing
Individual
that.
board
No,
members,
The
yes.
board shouldn't weigh in.
Say-
Discuss. Like, it just felt like formal, I don't know, I felt like maybe formally was a little bit too restrictive in terms of, like, we don't evaluate in any manner.
Right.
Like, it was just
Yeah,
simply,
it's
we
not-
don't evaluate. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
I think that's right.
I think it is too. It does clarify it.
Well,
Think it first.
You don't
Yeah,
evaluate.
well, how about
Yes.
this? You know, say we have an instance, like we just talked about in our training, where we do have to review whether or not an employee abused their discretion. That technically could be a form of evaluation. We've evaluated an action.
Yeah,
So
but
we
it's
haven't
formal.
evaluated
It's not
job
a
performance, but
performance
we've
evaluation.
evaluated an aspect of their
Performance.
in a certain context.
But it's pretty narrowly defined,
Yeah.
and even in that case, then it is still the superintendent's position to conduct the actual evaluation, taking that into consideration as a participant. I think this also clarifies it for staff,
Mm-hmm.
so that a principal cannot come, for use an example, cannot come to a board member to lobby on their own behalf, knowing the performance evaluation is coming
Sure.
up, for example. It makes the line very clear,
I don't,
which I think is a good
There's a,
thing.
there's
I
a
don't-
provision in discipline and dismissal below that has a nice way of saying it,
It
except where,
does.
except where required by law or whatever it says. In other words, never unless you are required to by
Yeah.
law.
well, I was gonna say, you never evaluate, you do make sure the law is followed.
Right.
So something would come before us, as we just discussed, if someone was breaking the law.
And it says involve the evaluating. In that lower, in
Everything
one
we
point three,
discussed was
discipline and
law.
dismissal, it talks about
Yeah, it was
evaluating.
legal obligations, but it had to do with, I think we're okay. Unfortunately, we have no choice but to do what's asked of us,
Right,
when it's asked of us, but I think someone could technically say that we were
evaluating.
evaluating a job performance aspect of someone other than the superintendent in this situation.
You know, I, now that I see the language you're pointing out, I'm thinking that these two sections are accomplishing different things. They're
Are.
somewhat overlapping, but
They're somewhat-
1.2 and
They're
and one-
unintentionally overlapping, I
yeah,
think.
1.2 would
1.3.
probably say must not formally evaluate, because that's what this section is about, formal supervision. We supervise the superintendent supervises everyone else, they do the formal evaluations. And then this is, addressing the discipline and dismissal, where it's clear that there can be sometimes a legal
The board is
obligation
involved.
to be involved.
So maybe that was the
but-
purpose of the word formally?
That's what
Makes sense.
I'm not sure, I know that I didn't come up with the word formally, that either came from the policy governance language or from the VBA policy, so I'm just, the VSBA policy. But I'm just guessing that maybe it says formal because this section is about sort of formal
The structure of-
structures.
Okay.
But, I don't know.
I'm more wondering
I don't know.
why the concept of evaluating is then restated lower. In other words, it's basically giving permission to evaluate employees in 1.3 discipline and dismissal. It's saying there are circumstances under which we will be evaluating employees.
No, we may be participating in decisions or actions that involve evaluating. But we're
Okay,
not
okay.
conducting a formal
Okay.
evaluation, which is a thing, a formal
So
evaluation is a
leading versus
specific thing.
participating in?
Conducting
No.
a formal evaluation versus having some role to play in a process that involves, yeah.
So formally evaluating is conducting? I'm not sure where you get the idea of conducting.
must not formally evaluate. I sort of read that
As
as the
conducting.
board does not, as an entity,
Okay.
conduct the evaluation of employees. And that section is kind of setting up that whole supervisory structure.
And participate in decisions and actions involving implies to me there's been evaluation, and now
Yeah.
the board is asked to participate in decisions and actions based on.
Not evaluation.
And that too rarely happens, but there are some circumstances where it
Right.
doesn't.
Yeah.
that well.
I just think the idea of conducting versus something that's formal or not synonymous. That's what I'm concerned about. And I like conducting. I think that's appropriate, and I don't know what formal means.
So I did receive just a notice from a member of the public that they are not able to find these documents online. So I just want to,
These policies,
yeah,
they wouldn't be, we haven't adopted them yet.
would the
packet.
the packet be online so people can review if they're read and
Heather, do we put the packets online traditionally?
agenda? I think it's possible to use, because, part of the purpose of the readings is to have,
The
get
public
input.
weigh in.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So anything in the packet that doesn't relate to personnel could go online? There's a question mark after that.
And we do, this is still the very first reading, this is still discussion, so there's still several readings coming.
Yes.
So yes, there's still plenty of time for the public to weigh in on all the drafts.
Yeah. But I think it is legitimate if, unless you're, as a member of the public, unless you're sitting here, even if you're sitting here listening to it, you're not sure what we're talking about, so.
Let me check on that.
Okay.
So I
Let me
would,
check on that though, because it's the board's responsibility to make policy. What I'm questioning is that the public has voted you all in to create these policies.
Yes.
So that's what I'm questioning. So let me just check.
Okay.
and I would say it's a matter of, it's just sort of like having a packet here. If you come in and are going to listen to us, and we've talked for 2 hours about something you have no documents on, it's not very much fun. And so that would be the same thing. If you're home and listening to us online, it would be nice to know what we're talking about. But if that's the case, then everything ought to have a draft on it. Because if I go to the site
A watermark or
and
something.
see this
Yeah.
policy, I
Right.
might get
Yeah.
myself all in a twit about something that's, as you just said, are 3 drafts away.
Right.
So,
And I've had community members tell me before, and it's like, so you as a board member, well, in Roxbury, we're policy governance, you manage by the board, you don't tell the superintendent to do this, you have policy that directs. Will you please write a policy that includes language that would accomplish this?
Yeah.
So I think people are interested in having us
Absolutely.
as a conduit to policy, so.
Well, I mean, my thought is, I absolutely agree that, we make the policy and we set the policy and we're elected to do that, but, part of the reason of having the various readings, discussions, and having public comment is if a member of the public reads a policy we're considering but has not adopted and has concerns or questions they want to bring to the attention of the board, that's their opportunity to do so. We don't necessarily have to listen to them, but otherwise they don't have a meaningful opportunity to do
Be
that.
engaged.
And we want to be
Inclusive.
as inclusive as practical, which we understand there's a bureaucratic burden and cost to being super productive in terms of documents, so we want to be sensitive to that, but in general, more is better.
It's also, just as a practical matter, they're public records, and so if someone asks for them,
They need to be
we'd have to give
provided.
them, it's much easier to just post
Put it
them,
up.
Post
so
them
that
up.
no one has to ask for them.
It would just be easy. Most of our packets are pretty small. I mean, you might just be able to scan them as a PDF and tag that on the.
well, they're Word
Yeah.
documents, so they can just be attached, right?
As to what?
Well, you mean post, like you mean
Post.
Post it.
link
Yeah.
to
It's always
Word.
better in PDF, because that
Yeah.
announcer party cannot alter the text.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you know how to.
I defer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're beyond policy.
Okay. So anyhow, sorry.
Good point, whoever brought it up.
Was there anything else on that?
So what did you decide about that?
Oh, right, we
But
didn't
the word
decide.
formally-
We got
Formally or not?
distracted by the.
Yeah.
Why don't we just take, must not evaluate? Formally, it confuses things and I'm not sure it accomplishes anything.
So I didn't have a good example for an informal evaluation, but it just, yeah, it caught my attention.
Yeah.
So.
So now I'm back to well, then the next one is like contradicting. I realize it doesn't, but it does, right?
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
One is
One is
Which
like-
part?
evaluate, and the other is participating in a decision that involved it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think one is, we don't sit down and evaluate the performance of employees, but there might be a disciplinary action or some sort of action where we're required to review a decision that was made based on an evaluation.
We are allowed under 1.3 discipline to participate in a decision in evaluating an employee.
No,
No, it does not
decisions
say
or
that.
actions involving the
The evaluation.
evaluating.
If it's required by law or
Yeah.
negotiated.
That part I understand, but participating in a decision involving, there's a lot of words there, or actions involving the evaluating is the same as participate in evaluating.
It does not
No, it's not.
participate in those.
Okay.
Because someone could come up and complain about their evaluation and a disciplinary action based on their evaluation. We could actually be evaluating the evaluation in
Okay.
our decision, if it's required. But we won't do the actual evaluation. We won't sit down with Principal X and say, great job or bad job based on whatever data. That's not our job. You ready to move on? Steve looks unconvinced.
I'd put formally back in at that point. I think it's better than redundancy, or it's better than contradiction, but you guys, I'm fine to be, on the scale of 1 to 10, I care about a 3 on this. So let's keep
Okay.
moving. Let's go 4.
Okay. More comments on the board superintendent relationship draft policy. You good? Okay. Board expectations. And this one I think has the most new sections added that were not talked about at the.
Right, and I think before we jump into the full discussion, most of the new additions aren't included in the draft that was sent out in the packet. Well, not most, but yeah, I apologize. The board committee section F, I did fill in, but I didn't read the section in the packet because I thought I knew it was coming. So I didn't realize until that board committee stuff was not included.
This is something I could find.
Right, so there was some more information related to the other board officers, the vice chair, record keeper, et cetera, that's not included in this. Obviously, the stuff that's in front of us now is the same. It was just there are some additions that aren't included in this draft. So there would still be more stuff forthcoming for another discussion that would, yeah.
So did you want us to discuss what's here now?
The stuff that is here, we could, yes. I don't think, right, the sections that are in front of us are up to date. It's just that there are still, I really did flesh out the board committee sections. There's a lot more details in terms of standing ad hoc, what's required for us in terms of charges, durations, reports, et cetera. The same thing, we didn't have anything related to the other offices. We have a vice chair, we've elected a parliamentarian, record keeper, et cetera. We didn't have anything in regards to their duties. So when we really fleshed out the board chair duties, I included the other officers in there as well. So yes, the information that is in front of us now is up to date with the exception of the stuff that's been accidentally omitted.
You should get me that copy.
Okay. Yeah.
So folks, other than the inclusion of that next time, comments on the expectations draft policy? Yeah, Bridget.
That's awesome.
We've never had this much detail about the chair's role before. And I wondered if some of it is really the kind of material we should have in a policy. You know, I mean, things like the chair is expected to be a strong advocate for the district. And some of the stuff around, you know, is that, it's just,
It's a little weird, isn't it?
it's, yeah, it seems a little weird to be in policy. It's more sort of, you know, how to be a board chair.
Did this come,
And-
where did this come from?
Does this come from Robert Rules?
VSBA.
This was, it was a combination, so the sections regarding, like you're talking about, the advocacy, et cetera, that was information from the VSBA for best practices for board chair. It wasn't in policy, it was just, I used it to kind of structure the responsibility of the chair. Yeah, so the VSBA would say that a board chair's primary role is the team building, goal setting, agendas, and running meetings effectively. The community stuff as well, but that was the VSBA's framework for this is how a good board chair operates and how it accomplishes board work successfully.
In practical terms, the way a board chair functions effectively is that they remember that they serve at the pleasure of the other members of the board, and that they check in with the board informally, constantly, to make sure that they are representing, that their leadership represents the desires of the other folks on the board. They don't have to, and so what I'm saying is that there may want to be a statement about the fact that the board serves at the pleasure, or the chair serves at the pleasure of the board. I mean, ultimately, that is the most important political point about being a chair.
And under community, it does say, though the chair can speak for the board, the chair cannot act independently and direct any actions by
And
themselves.
in practical terms, that's the result. As soon as you act independently, you lose your chair. But it's one of those things that you see that, you know, a good chair just simply says, am I solid all the time? So, you know, this is a good document. You know, it is a bit verbose, but it just,
Yeah, I think it's helpful.
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
On the meetings, some of these things I'm not sure we do. I don't know what, to enforce the rules relating to debate.
that's a Robert's Rules
That's a
thing.
Robert's Rules concept.
Which section are you in right now, Bridget?
I'm in the meetings. Protect the board from obviously dilatory motions by refusing to recognize them.
Ooh.
Powerful chair.
If he gets
That
mad at
was-
us, he can't.
That was
That may
Robert's
not have
rules.
to be mentioned, though, right? To stage a walkout when necessary.
Shunning.
And I wasn't sure about the authenticating by signature, if that's even something that is a power of a school board chair.
There are documents, and Jim, you know better than I would, that the board chair does sign off
Yeah.
on things. I can't give you a specific example, but I do
More
know in
than
the
I had
past.
previously thought.
But are those
And it'll
district
be only
actions?
your name on it,
This is
even
a
though
board.
Steve says you're representing the board.
You do that on behalf of the board, not on the
Yeah.
district, because you don't need to do it for,
It's not always exciting stuff, but it needs to be
No?
done, yeah.
Okay.
It's a good document, it clarifies a lot of things.
Yeah, no, this
Yeah,
is great
I think
work,
so,
Brian.
On D1, I would like to advocate that if we're gonna have that section, that we should have the exact language of 312H
Yeah.
and not, which,
I'll
the exact
paraphrase.
language.
creating a
of-
new rank.
Yeah, the exact language is, at an open meeting, the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to express its opinion on matters considered by the public body during the meeting, as long as order is maintained. Public comment shall be subject to reasonable rules established by the chair.
You're looking at E1?
I'm
D-
looking.
D1.
Oh,
D1.
D1, sorry.
So that's what that statute actually says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm fine with that.
That's section
So it's the
312.
same thing.
Yeah.
That's section
Mhm. Yeah.
312H, which is what's cited
Mhm.
there.
So get rid of the summary, just put in the actual statute.
it's just sort of, because it says open meeting law, that would be my.
I think that's
that'd be
really
my
smart.
preference, is just put it there.
We don't try to create something that isn't true or isn't
Well-
already established.
If it's already
What is
there,
the
let's
tape or
use it.
videotape, the,
So I looked into that a little bit, and Ryan and I talked about it. I don't
anyone use
see
tape or
that.
videotape anymore?
Oh, right, does anyone use that? I don't think so. They can record it. I don't see that in the statute where you could cite it. Jim Condos, the Secretary of State, says on their website that they construe the law to allow taping or videotaping of meetings. I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't be permissible to record a public meeting, as long as you're not disrupting the
Yeah.
procedure. But I don't think it actually says that anywhere in the open meeting law. So we could add it to the policy to be clear that we're fine with it. I agree, maybe record is better than videotape.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about that.
I don't know if it belongs in here, participation in board meetings. And it's kind of a personal concern is the issue of participation in board meetings from afar. And how do we want, is that something we should be clear in policy, or is it simply something the board just kind of does on an ad hoc basis? But through technology limitations, it's often felt as if it's virtually impossible, even though we also say that we do it. Those of us who've tried to do it kind of give up after a while.
It's very hard.
And it's not that big of an investment in technology to actually make that work, but it requires, I think, the board to either value it or not value it. I don't know if a board member has a statutory right to it. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So maybe not, but I'm sure the board itself can establish the procedures around that. And I don't know how that gets done or where that gets done, but I would just say that as a board, at some point, we should make a decision about whether we're going to create the environment that allows that or not. Because right now, it just feels like I'm out of luck if I'm traveling, which I don't want to be. I want to be participating.
So should we, I feel the same way. Yeah.
I've seen you try to
Yeah.
call in.
And I also just feel it's something that the technology exists, and there's a lot of entities out there that take advantage of it. Yeah, some of the video stuff's a little more clumsy, but certainly good audio participations. Maybe a line, reasonable measures shall be taken to allow for
To accommodate.
Yeah, audio or virtual attendance by board members who are unable to be physically present.
Well, so then the question I have to say, also having tried it, is reasonable. So,
I think, yeah.
what is that? And often if you're
This-
away and it's just audio,
In this day and age, putting it up on a Google video is so super easy.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've presented that way to
Yeah.
boards before, so it's
You could have
it's
a big
super easy.
Steve head on
Exactly.
the wall.
I
That
guess-
was gonna be my question, is that technology not something, it doesn't require a financial investment?
Oh, gotcha,
to make
no,
that
we already
work.
have it, no. We are in Google world.
It requires the imagination
Very
to use
easily.
it.
As of July
I think
1. you're
part
eligible.
of this, Libby, is it's not that we couldn't, we haven't done it well. So the
We can
question.
do it very easily.
I mean, my other thought on that is it's such an easy problem to solve that do we really need a policy?
No, and I'm not saying we do. I just maybe was getting a sense, I want to get a sense from the board whether the board feels it's something worth trying to accommodate or not. And
Yes.
I wouldn't be insulted either way. It's more a matter of, let's just get it clear so we can move on, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think, given, you travel a lot, I travel a fair amount, Bridget and others travel too. I think it's something we can do, it's something we should do, and it will increase participation, and we might have a quorum problem at some point.
Well,
I think
that's what I was gonna say, it's a philosophical discussion about, it's not here, but in some boards, they used to say, you miss 2 meetings, you're out.
Yeah.
Or they used to write down how many meetings, so, but what does missing mean? Are you here? Is it a quorum if you're here on Google Docs?
Well, I mean, you can have
You can-
meaningful
Yeah.
participation
Yeah.
And it does follow
Why
the
not?
law.
virtually, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
philosophical.
Especially when you first started speaking, I thought you were gonna talk about, the technology to allow the public to interact more with us
Mm.
at the meetings.
It's another level of it.
So it is another part of that discussion, but
We can call Jim.
we got it tonight. We can-
Yeah.
Maybe there's a general consensus, or a consensus that, or something that we want to use technology in general to increase participation in every way we can. We don't want to create, big financial burdens, and that includes staff time, to make that happen. But if it's easy to access, we should start to think that way, about using technology to increase participation in every way.
I do need a time check. We are 25 minutes over.
Okay, so we're not going to put it in here.
No, but we ought to try it. I think
I-
we don't need to put it in the policy, but we ought to give it a try.
I think we should make a board commitment to
Okay.
get it up and get it running, and I think once we,
Make ourselves.
I don't think it's that hard, I think once we do it a few times.
Get a little
and the
experience,
system
do it
down,
more.
Yeah, and you'll
Steve, I
probably
got you covered, don't worry.
Thank you so much.
be one of the first. Okay, last one, superintendent expectations. Comments or questions on the reading of this policy?
Gotta fix the numbering.
Fans of technology
Yeah, it goes
also.
from 2.2 to 2.5, just.
Feel it tonight, man.
Yeah.
Two of them over
Feel
there.
it tonight.
Who's
Right.
editing this one? Jim?
I'm just making notes of edits on all of them, and then I give them everything to Heather.
Okay,
Safekeeping.
the numbering.
Unless
So
you-
we're actually editing them.
He's done that already?
At least they're minor edits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll ask one question. 2.2, number 6. Again, I don't know much about contract law, but proposed contracts to provide flexibility to remove non-unionized employees for cause. Is cause the best term to use there? Was performance, or is
That's a
Cause is
legal
the
term.
It is.
is that the best?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you could also say just cause, but cause is your right
I
word.
kind of
think there.
thought so, but it was something I'm not terribly familiar with, and it seemed
Yeah.
a little bit odd, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
get some
Cause is a
verification there.
very well established word in law.
In contract law.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just really happy about 2.13, foster a district culture that is open and responsive to the concerns of stakeholders. To me, that's a really wonderful, positive, aspirational statement in there that just makes me want to do a happy dance.
We have some mission vision issues in this one.
Since we don't have one.
It says,
So,
2.0 global expectation, at the last part of the first paragraph says, in a manner that does not violate the mission and core values of the district.
We
I
had
don't-
debates about that.
Oh,
Yeeks.
right.
Did we decide to leave it in even though we don't have values?
We
That
even started talking about whether we wanted to have you wanted to have values or not. That was an unanswered
It was
question.
an unanswered question.
Because we had a list before.
We had a list before in there.
So
yes.
that's another
Okay.
question
Well,
we have to
values.
decide
Won't
is,
those be more in like the ends? Our values go in our ends? I guess not. Ends are what we achieve, values are how we live.
Right.
and we were avoiding using the word ends.
Yeah.
But still,
Like,
we are referring to something here, and what is that?
into two things. that
Also-
are-
It could
Do-
be consistent with commonly accepted business and professional ethics and practices, and with achieving progress toward the district's vision.
yeah, I was gonna say, in
Yeah.
a manner that advances the vision of the district.
Yeah.
It does not violate, gets us back in the negative
Right.
world.
That's kind of cool.
You wanna stick with core values?
I'm
No.
hesitant to have it in there if we don't have it.
Yeah, if you don't have, yeah, cause then it's
No, it's just the vision. It's gonna
the
include our
vision of the
values.
district, yeah.
Which should represent your values.
Yeah.
And your policies, which are down.
And it's
All
also
these things
continues to
reflect.
speak in the positive rather than in the negative
Yeah.
in this way. It's like continues to aspire and,
So, but, yeah, we didn't really resolve this. It's the same thing in the last sentence of 2.0. that we had this value language.
That can be
Just
deleted.
change values to
So
vision.
delete
Division,
that.
I think so,
Can be
values
deleted.
division there.
And then it says link to
Wait,
the
didn't we
establishment.
just state that though in the way we redid 2.0?
Yeah, I think we can just get rid of that line.
It's kind of now established.
Because in a manner that advances the vision of the district and must lead and manage in a manner that adheres to and reflects the district's vision. Seems-
Well,
Or
now I'm wondering if we should
cut the
cut
first-
the
there you
first
go.
clause and leave this, because I kind of like lead and
Yeah,
manage.
Because they're two different ideas.
They're two different ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
we could
which
cut
one are we
2
cutting?
off after ethics and practices,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then leave that last one in
Good work.
with vision instead of values.
That what?
So it
It does-
adheres to and reflects the district's vision.
Cool. Wow, there's some pretty high bars here. The superintendent must employ best practices for retention of staff. I mean,
That's actually not new. I think it just used to
No.
say the superintendent must not fail to employ.
best practices was in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't fall short. Huh?
I mean, if it doesn't, the fact that it was there before doesn't mean
Absolute-
it has to be there now.
Not
but
second best practices. These are the best practices.
You guys have a list of those, so I'm clear.
Right. Where do I see that list? Well,
Bridget, I don't think I remember noticing this in other policies. Have we referred to policies in the past as district policy or board policy?
It's totally inconsistent at this point, but we
Yeah,
made
it
a
is.
decision at the
At
retreat
some
that
point
we
we
were
will
gonna
go back
start
at some
going to
point.
district policies.
Okay.
Yes.
I think so.
But we haven't gone back and fixed that.
because there are no other policies for the district, other than
Right.
board policies, which are.
Right.
Which are
Right,
district
yeah,
policies, it's
okay.
just clear.
I think I have a note on that. Forgot.
I'm sorry I missed this before, but we've completely gotten away from that standard of that the superintendent, that the board is judging, that the superintendent shall be the judge of these things. I can't remember how that's worded.
No, we're not completely away from that.
The judge of
Shall
what
be the
thing?
judge of what
Board-
thing?
Yeah.
In the board superintendent relationship
Yeah, that's
policy,
where I was missing it.
it says that the superintendent, in managing the district, it's under superintendent's discretion. The superintendent has discretion to use any reasonable interpretation of the district's policies.
Okay.
The board must respect and support decisions made by the superintendent that reflect a reasonable interpretation.
That's where best practice for staff retention is
Yeah.
okay.
Including the
That's why I
reasonable
was just
interpretation of
seeing how
what
that
the
ties
best
together, because you need a standard to judge things by.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
That's the no second guessing line.
Well, yeah,
One
it's that
has just
very
made
high
a
standard of,
decision.
that is
Right.
totally not reasonable.
Yeah.
That's the standard, yeah. Okay.
Because we have all new, terribly clear policies, so he knows exactly what to
Yeah.
do.
We'll get there.
Are we okay?
Yep.
Yeah, the only other thing is emergency superintendent succession. I think we discussed this, maybe we decided against it, I'm misremembering. She has something in there about just not ensuring that the administrator designated as potential interim successor is aware of that designation, but that the board is aware of the designation too. Or at least the board chair is aware of the designation.
That's fine.
Huh?
And therefore the board should be aware, right?
Yeah, but
What's the
the
mechanism?
duty from the superintendent would be filled by telling me with the idea that I tell all of you.
And it stands until it's changed? It's done at least
Yeah.
annually and then it stays?
Oh,
until
there
next-
being, should something happen to the superintendent where, this succession is quick and unplanned.
I win the Powerball.
That's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
Or many other things that may occur.
That's the
We don't
only
have-
thing.
We don't have two
So you
staff
wanna add
members
that?
fighting for the
You could
opportunity.
add
Yeah.
We wanna add
administrator
that.
designated as a potential is, and after that before the is, and the board chair.
Yes.
The superintendent must ensure the administrator designated as the interim
Interim
successor
successor.
and the board chair is
And the
aware,
board
Are aware.
sorry.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good call.
Well, except then
Oh, right,
it's-
then it's not a.
Yeah, then change
Oh, is
the
reasonably proficient.
potential interim successor is reasonably proficient.
And then we can
How
start
about
another
this, how about,
sentence.
and that the potential interim successor is reasonably proficient for the role, get rid of that comma, and is reasonably familiar with the board and superintendent issues.
I think it should just be another sentence.
Yeah, you're right.
It's, we tried to
Okay.
put too much into that
Yeah.
sentence.
So it's just a period, the superintendent must also ensure.
Is there a responsibility that this person, I mean, I guess the superintendent is appointing this person whether they like it or not,
Well, they have to be willing.
No, no,
Okay,
and they have to be told.
Oh, I see it there, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Willing to serve, okay. Well, they can be told, but that doesn't make them willing, but willing makes them willing.
Yeah, well, it's. So the second two sentences have, the superintendent must ensure that an administrator designated as potential interim successor and the board chair are aware of that designation. The potential interim successor must be reasonably proficient for that role and reasonably familiar with the board and superintendent issues.
So what's capable mean? It means that they have time?
I think it means that they have the skill set.
Right. And we discussed at the retreat, it doesn't require licensing because
Right.
that's not typically necessary.
You're not
I
gonna
mean,
have
they
two
probably
superintendent
wouldn't have time,
There you
there'd
go.
probably be someone
Yeah.
with another
Yeah,
full-time
it's
job
time.
who's gonna
How
have
could
to
they
like
have
step
time?
out of
Give it
that
a-
job.
I'm just wondering why it has to say reasonably proficient for the role if they
I
have to be
wouldn't choose a
capable.
teacher or an IA who doesn't
Yeah.
have administrative experience.
But they're capable.
It'd have to be somebody with administrative experience, I would imagine that's what that means.
Someone who could
Okay.
step in and,
Okay.
Okay, other questions or comments? Only 40 minutes over.
Given
Well,
everything.
Members of the
Not
public
bad.
are hanging in there. Members of the public are hanging in there.
It's giving it-
One and
9 is a pretty common adjournment.
I think it's fine. Good enough to
I
look.
don't know, notes, yeah. The last one wouldn't get that.
That's great.
But
Yeah,
We'll,
God,
we'll
these are
do
good
that.
policies.
perfect. Okay, let me know if you
I'm
get
also-
it.
Very good.
With my notes, we should be okay.
We had-
With my notes, we should be okay.
Sure.
Before we adjourn, I loved all of the first day of school stuff. The presence of social media was great.
Yes.
The memo, the weekly memo
Yes,
was great.
yes.
Getting a copy of what you share with the staff was really interesting to
Yes.
see. So just kudos to, on all of those fronts. Good, thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that.
Thanks to everyone in the
What a
district for a
great-
great start to the school year.
Great
start.
communication.
Yes.
I heard from parents great things
Yeah.
about how pleased they were with the start of the school year.
Good.
And Union's looking good, and that's not an easy feat to pull off right now.
Yep.
And stay tuned very shortly for a picture of the vestibule that we
Oh,
got
yeah.
today,
Okay.
with colors and everything.
Nice.
Yeah,
Everybody-
no, fantastic job.
It's just a great start.
How,
Thank you for saying that.
so, how, I didn't think about this, but the email I sent about how are we doing with Roxbury, how are we doing?
I don't, that was not a question that was on the
Appropriate?
agenda, right? Well, I think we've talked about not putting people on the spot without.
Yeah.
any
Oh, okay.
warning that something's gonna
Yeah.
come up, so I
No.
don't wanna cut off Jim or the superintendent, but I just wanna say.
I thought Jim said we would hear that, that's why I asked it.
Well, you
Okay,
did
we'll do
ask,
it
but you-
later.
yes,
I can answer them.
yeah.
Some of them are quick. Do you want me to just answer the quick ones?
It's up to Jim.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the food situation right now is that, so Tina asked how food was getting to Roxbury. So currently, Jim and the kitchen staff here in Montpelier are cooking this, at the high school, are cooking the students' food and then busing it, basically trucking it over to Roxbury until October. The reason being is that the hood project got messed up in the kitchen. So what the hood is being installed in October, and once that's installed, we can use the stove over there and all that kind of stuff. So everything's pretty much ready to go except for the hood. So we have
So
some
then will they
snafus
cook there?
Yes,
Oh, good.
yes, they will cook there. I'm just trying to remember.
And how's the busing going?
The busing is I would chalk it up to first days of school kind of busing challenges that most places experience. The bus from Roxbury to the Main Street Middle has been about 15 minutes late every day. So it's something that we're talking to the bus company about. Do we want to change the route so it's not going directly through, middle of Montpelier at a time that's very busy for traffic? So we're trying to work out some snafus around that. I mean, there are first day issues that happened. Some of it was merger related, some of it was just first day school related. So we're working on trying to get that there 15 minutes earlier than it is currently showing up.
Yeah, and I do just want to reiterate for kind of board decorum, and I know that you did send an email on this, so that it got lost in the mix. But let's try to stick to the agenda to the extent we can, and read stuff beforehand, ask questions by email beforehand, so either can be, if it's a simple question, can be answered, or if it's something that needs to be discussed, there's preparation for it.
Yeah, and Heather and I are getting those packets together on Friday morning, so any questions for the next Wednesday's board meeting should be to me before Friday, so we can get it in the stuff, get it in the packets.
Thank you for those answers.
Yeah, and if there is an email that was overlooked and it's something we could waive it, so
Okay.
ping us after the meeting and do it that way, so we can
All right, we can adjourn.
adjourn. And we do need to formally adjourn.
Move for adjourn.
Okay, second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thanks all.